Welcome back to this week's episode of Mining the Comments, where this week we'll talk about pressure and how it can actually make us sink. So this week on my usual old man walks, I started thinking about scuba diving, and I haven't done it in years. I started scuba diving when I was in my early 20s when I lived in Oregon. There was a dive shop about 10 minutes away, and I was dating somebody at the time that was really into scuba diving, and so she got me involved in it, and I really enjoyed it. There's a lot of things that I learned, a lot of wonderful experiences that I had, but ever since I moved out of Oregon, I really just never got back to it. But there was a particular story that I was thinking about that I thought would be interesting to share. So the dive shop would have quite a few outings or excursions, and one of the excursions that they had was this. There was a dam that was maybe less than an hour away. I don't remember the city. I don't remember much about it. Again, it was over 25 years ago. But the guys at the dive shop knew when they would schedule the dam to release water, and I think it was maybe once a month or so. But I think it also depended on the rain and obviously the dam relieves the water to relieve pressure. And so, anyways, I'm rambling. So, anyways, what the guys would do, they would schedule a dive the morning that they were relieving or releasing all this water. So they would go right up against the dam, they would jump in, and all that pressure, all that force from the water would just shoot them down in the river. And it was just that they would just go on this ride. And so I thought, well, that sounds fun. Let's give that a shot. Let's try this. And I remember on our way up there were, I don't know if it was like 2 or 3 different instructors that were coming with. And it was a small group, maybe 4 or 5 people, plus the instructors, so maybe total 6, 7 people, something like that. Anyway, what they talked about and says, this is super easy. There's really not a lot of thinking about it. You just jump in and just relax, breathe, and just let the water take you all the way down. That's it. When it comes to scuba diving, you see, if you're watching a movie or something, or if you've done it yourself, right? You're face down, you're kicking and you're moving forward, and you're looking at the bottom or whatever, right? But this was totally different. This, you would just jump in, and the pressure of the water would just flow, just push you through. And he said, the most important thing is to breathe. Just stay calm and breathe, because in diving, if you hold your breath, or if you're panicked and you breathe really fast, you tend to sink. And if you hold your breath, if you take a deep breath and you hold it, you tend to float. And so if you just stay relaxed and breathe, you can just allow the water to push you, and it's just kind of a fun little ride. And so a couple of the instructors went first, and then there was one at the end that waited for everybody to go, and he would kind of follow along to make sure everybody was okay. But they wanted to show us what it was like. And so I remember one of the guys, real big guy, 6'3" or something, kind of a heavy guy. He jumped in, went under, and then popped back up. And instead of maybe being face down and kicking, he was belly up. Legs were going down first, and I remember just him spinning and turning and just going with the flow. And I thought, well, that's not what I expected, but that's, I guess, what we're supposed to do. Just kind of flow down the river and just let it take you where it needs to go. So I was a little worried about this, because I still remember back then that most of my life I was very rigid. I was very tense. I always wanted to be in control of things. And then the idea of jumping in and just letting things go was kind of uncomfortable. So anyways, I remember we're right up against this dam. So obviously where the pressure is the strongest. And I remember jumping in and feeling this immense amount of pressure just push me forward. And my immediate go-to went from, being learn to be relaxed and to breathe, to just getting very rigid and balling up and putting my hand over my regulator and my mask to kind of hold it in place. And I just started bouncing off the river floor, just hitting the rocks over and over and over again. And I was obviously very stiff. I was holding my breath. I was, if I was breathing, it was very rigid. And I just kept hitting the ground. And then a little further down, I think the river pushed me out to the side, and I was able to grab on and crawl out of there. And I still remember one of the instructors yelling, "You need to breathe." And I was like, I am breathing. But I knew what he was saying. I was still very rigid. I was doing the complete opposite. I was holding on as opposed to just letting go and letting the river just take me. And so as I watched others pass me, same thing. They were just kind of breathing and kind of floating around and just pushing through. And so I dove in again. There's still quite a bit of speed to the river, still quite a bit of pressure. And once again, I felt myself holding my breath, being very tight. And I started hitting the ground again, just started bouncing off the rocks on the floor of the river. And again, a little bit further down, I pushed off. I got myself out of the main stream of it. And I pulled out, and I thought, okay, I need to just learn to breathe. I just need to just relax and learn to breathe. By now, the speed of the river was much slower. So there was a lot less pressure, a lot less stress. It seemed like it was going to be more manageable for me to try this. And so finally, the third time, I jumped in and I just started breathing. And all of a sudden, I started floating up to the top and just maybe sinking a little bit, but just kind of bouncing around. And I started realizing that's what they were talking about. I just needed to learn to let go and to breathe. And on moments I would find myself stiffening up, I would start sinking. So, okay, try and relax, try and let go. And anyways, so interesting, because that happened, 25 plus years ago. And I don't think I'd ever thought about it again. But I read this question this week. And so let's go to the question now, and hopefully we can make a connection with my scuba diving story. So question says, any tips for cortisol spikes in the morning? I am falling asleep and sleeping like a log first 4 to 6 hours. That's awesome. But then 5 or 6 a.m. I wake up stressed because of work, loneliness, things I must do. We'll just keep reading through the whole question and then go back. I had it much worse. Serious insomnia, worrying about my sick father. Hope he's doing better. But then it improved with more gratitude, kindness towards myself, leaving perfectionism where it belongs, in the garbage bin. Well, at least some of it. Awesome. Except these mornings. How do I wake up relaxed without cortisol spikes, or at least not big ones? So just to tackle cortisol spikes quickly, I did a search online, and it says cortisol spikes are a natural response to protect our body from perceived threats. Also helps regulate your response to stress. So perceived threats. If we are dealing with insomnia, we're dealing with perceived threats, correct? And it sounds like around 5 or 6 in the morning, you're waking up because you're dealing with these cortisol spikes, which may be because of perceived threats. So how do we handle perceived threats? Go back to befriending wakefulness, right? We start letting the subconscious know, first and foremost, that we're safe. When you wake up at 5 or 6 in the morning, there is no threat, there's no danger, you're safe. So when you wake up, first and foremost, let's kind of look around the room, kind of assess our environment, take a moment and just check in with ourselves and just let ourselves know that we are safe. We're safe. So that's definitely a good start. Let's go back to the top of the question. I'm falling asleep, blah, 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 blah. I wake up stressed because of work, loneliness, things I must do. Now, the things I must do, we covered this in an earlier episode. It was on Minding the Comments, number 34, change your burdens to gifts. So if you want to look that one up, that'll kind of help answer the things I must do. We talked a little bit about, instead of looking at things as we must do them, look at them as an opportunity. I don't want to go any further in there because we already covered it. And so let's go over the other two that we have left. One is loneliness and work. Loneliness. My goodness, I feel you on this one. I'm married, have kids, have a couple dogs. But during my insomnia, during that horrible struggle where I wasn't sleeping at all, and I was just up all night the loneliness felt just unbearable. I felt it was it was awful. I would go on walks in the middle of the night, hoping that I could even just see a car driving by, just because I felt like I was the only one up in the middle of the night. So I'm sorry that you're dealing with that. That's incredibly difficult. Stress because of work. The other thing I would say is whenever we're dealing with stresses or things that are occupying our mind, it's really good to go and get a journal and write things down. Write things down. Don't necessarily have to have an answer or response or a solution to this, but write things down so your brain is being heard. Whatever the thoughts are, listen to them. Allow them to be and exist, and see how that feels. Oftentimes, writing these things down can definitely help you and kind of calm that anxiety down. And so again, so that covers those three kind of vaguely, kind of quickly. But let's go back to the first part of the question. See, then I wake up at 5 or 6 a.m. stressed because of work, loneliness, and things I must do. That sounds like a tremendous amount of pressure, right? And any time we're dealing with stress or with pressure, we tend to tighten up. We tend to become rigid. The opposite of allowing ourselves to breathe, to relax, and to flow. And so when you wake up at 5 in the morning, first and foremost, know that maybe there's a lot of pressure that we're holding. Maybe there's a lot of rigidity. And so how do we change that perception? How do we view things differently so we have less pressure, right? We've covered writing things down, the other video of changing things from I must to I get to, like an opportunity. And then when I was talking about scuba diving, what I realized is so much of our insomnia deals with us being rigid and learning to flow. And so what if at 5 or 6 in the morning, when you were dealing with your struggle, when you were dealing with, like I was doing, when I had to jump in, and instead of relaxing and allowing things to be, we hold our breath, we become very rigid and tight. That puts a lot of pressure. And then we start creating this pattern. And so every morning now we've created this pattern, believing that this pattern is something that it's cortisol levels. It's something that we need to learn how to do differently. When maybe all we need to do, like in my example, is just to allow, accept, relax, breathe, and give it time. Give it time for your subconscious to see that at 5 and 6 in the mornings, you're safe. There's nothing that you need to do. And just allow it to be. I've had mornings, still to this day, I think it was maybe a couple of weeks ago, when I woke up quite early. I think it was maybe 4 or 5 in the morning, because I checked my clock at this time, because I was going to get up because I felt so wide awake. I was like, it's not even 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm just going to lay here and rest, right? And so I could have thought about why I'm so wide awake as maybe a cortisol spike or fear or anxiety. But what I decided to do is take a different stance on it and say, well, whatever it is, it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to breathe, relax, let myself know that I'm safe, and just allow whatever happened to happen. And my bed was comfortable. I was enjoying it. I thought, I'm just going to rest. And I fell back asleep and I woke up at 7 o'clock. So I would say that it doesn't matter what struggle we're going through. Our defense mechanism is there to protect us. And so we become very rigid, we become very stiff. And when we become very stiff, whether we're in the water or in real life, we tend to sink. Things tend to get heavy. We tend to hit the ground, and we even tend to bounce and take a beating. And so now we become more rigid, more tense. When in reality, anytime and every time we respond with allowing ourselves to know that we're safe, to breathe, to relax, we can actually start learning to flow and even enjoy the ride. That is all for this week. I hope this was helpful. And again, as I've said it before, this journey of insomnia is a difficult one. So strive to be kind and patient with yourselves. And that's all for this week. Take care. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Hi there, Coach Dial here, and I hope you thoroughly enjoyed the video that you just saw. If you are finding yourself thinking a lot about what your life would be like if you weren't struggling with sleep, if you had bandwidth for everything else in life that you want to do, if you felt like yourself again, if you didn't even give the night a second thought, well, then I have news for you. Leaving the struggle is actually so much easier than we often think. Everything that you need truly is out here on our channel in our free content. The one thing that can be tricky though is that sometimes you don't really see where you are not contextualizing the teachings to yourself. And what also can be tricky is that it can feel a bit lonely and isolating to leave the struggle on your own. If this applies to you, then head over to thesleepcoachschool.com, because we have programs where you can join a community of people that are leaving the struggle, which is led by coaches who have already done so. And so if this, again, sounds like something you'd be interested in, head over to our website, thesleepcoachschool.com, and check out our Insomnia Immunity program. And if you decide to join, we can't wait to see you on the other side.